Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am Lucas and you are watching coldemonspl. This is my first YouTube movie, so please be patient and forgive me all my mishaps and shortcomings. I promise to do my best in next videos. Today I will use my tools on this one to show you all the building steps I did on this kit, from the beginning to the model ready to be primed. This is a classical T-34 with 76 gun, but the most interesting are the side skirts, which were tested by the Russians during Kursk battle. This is why it looks unique. All in all, this project was failed, all tanks were lost and massive production wasn't launched. Border did the job quite good, but there are some points where details could be done better. Okay, let's get to work. My habit is to cut all the bigger pieces just to save the space on my table. The smaller parts are still on the sprues because it's easier to find them in the box where I store them during the rest of the building stage. I decided to replace the plastic barrel for metal pipe. The 0.45mm syringe needle was used and yes, it's too big, but in the model it looks good and works perfectly with the plastic base I had. It was quite easy and only a bit of accuracy and patience during working with drill was needed. The machine gun was the only part the instructions suggest to add from the inside, even though its visible elements are outside. The reason is obvious: an easy access we have at this point. Adding it after gluing upper and lower hull would be also possible, but why make our life harder? The result is much better than using the original part from the kit. Cleaning of the wheels was boring as always. Luckily there were only 20 pieces. I started to clean them with hobby knife, but here more effective was sanding paper glued to the foam block. Making the handles with metal is always a good option, but we need to remember to make the holes in proper size. At this point only rear and front handles were replaced. The weld seams in the model were good, but not as good as I would like to have. But no, I think saying they are average is more appropriate. So a bit of brute force and they were only a piece of useless plastic. I was cleaning and preparing the place for a new one around the machine gun port, which is intended to be molded later with green stuff. In some places they were completely absent, so I kept in mind that they would have to be made. I love the small eye-catcher elements and I usually add them when it's possible. They always focus the viewer's attention, initiate the discussion, or are simply coding in mind. I hope so. As you can see here, I cut the hex bolt heads and drill some holes to simulate the missing ones. All the edges after cutting and drilling were softened with super thin plastic glue. Now it's time to make some structure of steel. Russian rough steel. I think it's clear enough and all we know what doesn't mean. There are different ways to make good looking texture. It's up to you what solution you choose and which will be the right one to use on your model. For mine I used AK Interactive Easy Cast solution. It can be diluted with tap water and I like to use it because of fast drying time. As you can see, to apply it on the model I used an old brush, which has its glory behind, but it's perfect for this purpose. One or more layers can be added, just remember to keep clean all the details. After drying, which can be speed up with hair dryer, I sanded all surfaces with fine sanding sponge and I re-drilled the handles holes. To make handles I used 0.7mm soldering wire, which is easy to bend. This is its advantage and disadvantage at the same time. We can form different shapes, cut it with hobby knife, but on the other hand it can be damaged during the operations or after gluing to the kit. Well, we can use plastic ones from the set or fight with some harder material like copper, for example. To make the same distance from the steel I used a small balsa plank, and the only glue used here was cyanoacrylate one. The small PE thread is added to the kit, and the most important part on it is the mesh for engine cover. Maybe it is not so sophisticated as the other sets, but fits perfectly, and we need only to bend it to form the correct shape. The step roller from RP Tools was very useful, but I also used my own fingers. A hand tool, I can say. To glue it to the kit I used black slow drying super glue. It was the perfect choice because I had couple seconds to set it properly. The glue is dry and we can make some damages. As you can see, it's easy and we can do it with any tool we have nearby. But the best to make some rips is some kind of sharp blade. Please do it gently, it's easy to overdo and ruin the part. I took a wooden block from my children's box to straighten the wire. They have different shape than the rest and I used the plastic part to make a copy. The same wooden plank you could see before was used to keep identical distance from each handle. And again I used black super glue. Thanks to this I had more time to correctly position the handles. All the excess of the glue which left on the model was washed off with a debonder. Because I'm a lazy guy, I left the side handles in plastic. They were mainly covered with the armor shields, so there is no need to replace them. Trucks. I hate plastic trucks. Sanding, sanding and more sanding. One by one. I hate this. Oh, it's me working. Now you can consider subscribing to the channel. To make the work easier I use my homemade truck tool. It's simple but works perfectly. I will show it someday. Each links were glued with thin glue and left to dry. I prefer the citrus one. It smells nice but my wife hates it. Drying of the truck links shouldn't be complete because we need them still flexible and possible to form on the wheels. It is always needed to make it gently but quite quickly, which is the opposite of working with metal trucks, where we can work at any pace. Once they are on the place, small pieces of sponge were pressed into the gap between truck and the hull. They were enough to keep the truck on the place for complete drying. Both ends were saved with paper tape in correct shape. It's very important to form the trucks in natural way with SAG, if it's correct of course. And this is why I love metal trucks or workable plastic trucks. They do the job without any interference. And after all, it's easier and more comfortable to work with them during painting and weathering. I always say, no more plastic trucks. And again, I struggle with them. I should listen to my wife who, looking at the time wasted, repeats,
What? Plastic trucks? Where are the frills or master claps?
Is she right? Most likely yes. So, never more plastic trucks. And this is how they look like after forming. Short break to pick up the parcel and go with the dog. I have received the Quick Wheels mask. There are also resin boxes from Bits Creek to replace the plastic I have. These boxes are not a copy or reworked copy of any existing kit and were designed from the beginning to the end using the original parts from the war survivors. Perfect. Thanks a lot, guys. I glued the smaller one into brackets which were on the model and it fitted without any corrections. The same was done on the other side. Again, I used the debonder to clean the surface. Nice and easy. Now I don't need the sponge anymore. It's time for general checking. Well, honestly I love the shape of the T-34, especially 76 gun version. Simple and brutal at the same time. Yeah, I know that the way I make the handles was shown, but here we have 29 handles on this kit. They took more time than cleaning the wheels. Most of them were replaced for metal ones and I can say that it was a good choice, even time consuming. The same like before, I used the plastic parts to bend the wire for good shape. And I glued them with black super glue. This is the instruction from Aber website I printed to check what can be done to upgrade the rear fuel tanks. First the mounting bracket, then the bolts, next the second mounting bracket on the tank floor. Easy job. The same like before, I cut the bolt where the bracket will be mounted and keep it for adding later. The plastic element which can help to mount the tank on the rear wall was cut off and sanded. Based on the pictures I found on the internet, I used a set of punch and die to make some round elements which were added on the tank floor. I suppose it's some kind of drain plug or something like that. Please tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. I also added some additional mount because there were no left or right side container. Now drop of my favorite glue and the bolts I cut before were added. The antenna rod is metal part from RB model. There is also some spring in the socket. And now check this out. Another extra addition to my model were towing cables from Eureka XXL. For all of you who are not familiar with this stuff, I'm going to show the whole process of preparing them. All sets of Eureka cables are packed in the same way. The resin ends are set in small holes and cables are sticked inside the paper leaflet. There is always more than we need in case of problem with good cutting of the wire. We need carefully cut off the thin resin film from the eye, clean the edges, And after this we have the ends ready to use. The holes can be drilled a bit if we want to put the wire deeper. I use typical super glue to connect the wire with ends. Now we need to make some measurements. It depends of our needs, but all ways are correct to find good length. We can use the model as a guide or vehicle manual to cut it precisely to the millimeter. It's up to you. Here I use the distance between holders to cut the cable, and both of them were cut for the same length. When the all-hole works were done, I prepared the turret. After assembling, I started again with the cast surface using the same method and product as before. Truly speaking, it will be covered in 90%, so I do it to have a clear conscience. And now it starts to look really good. Yeah! We are slowly approaching to the end, but before we can rest, the very important details need to be done. The weld seams. To form the correct lines, I prepared some extra sophisticated tools. One for U-shaped seams and the second for straight ones. The best option is two-component putty, which has long hardening time and we can work with it quite long. After mixing both parts, the small piece of putty was rolled with a couple drops of water, which prevents from sticking to the tools. Then I applied the snakes on the model around all details which were to be welded. And after all, they look nice. And ladies and gentlemen, done! Quite fast and easy.
Stop!
What the hell? I forgot to upgrade the front fenders, armor skirts and add missing handles on the sides. Couple minutes of break. I need some coffee. Because I like this version more than the one which was offered in the box, I used the references I found in the internet and drew some cutting lines on the skirts. A few quick cuts with a hobby knife and the plastic quickly broke where I wanted and all sides were ready. Simple job. Now the shields look much better, but the upgrade is not over yet. I made some sanding to round the corners and also added some holes after missing bolts. The mudguards were more complicated because I wanted to use plastic elements. The main parts were cut from thin sheet of metal, formed and glued to the model. I also added some details, the same as it was done on plastic elements. Some bolts were also added on the side skirts. And the handles. Again. Oh my god. For the end I use a pair of pliers to make some effects of uncareful driving. And now it's ready. Yes, with no more to add or change. That's all for today, my friends. I hope you enjoyed the content. Please let me know your opinion and thoughts about the movie. it's highly recommended to subscribe the channel and click thumb up. Just in case if you want to see more of my models, please take a look at my Instagram or Facebook account. You can also check my blog, the links are below. See you next time, cheers!